This is the politics of everything, and I'm your host, Amber Daines. Welcome to the podcast where we want to discuss the politics of everything, from money to motherhood, nutrition to narcissism, startups to secularism, the environment to equality, and much more. Our guests are experts in their field or topic of choice, even if you've not yet heard their name. This is a bipartisan podcast, so while we love exploring varied views and get a buzz from a healthy debate, by no means is this a one-sided forum for any one political view. So please listen up and enjoy the politics of everything. The idea of wealth exudes the idea of excessive amounts of money and the ability to have more than our fellow man or woman. However, what if wealth was redefined as a more broad goal, such as our overall state, to include our mental, spiritual and physical wealth, as well as just our material wealth? On my podcast now is Chris Bates, a financial planner, a mortgage broker, who says his approach is very different. He was a financial advisor for over a decade and has had thousands of client conversations. And today he offers his clients meaningful financial advice that he hopes makes a real difference. Today, we dig deep as we chat about the politics of wealth. Welcome to the program, Chris.
Thank you. Good to be here.
Okay, let's dive in here. How would you define true wealth from your perspective and why?
Okay, cool. I guess firstly, I don't really like the word wealth in society. I think it's very misrepresented and it's given the wrong rap, I guess, and it's defined very finely as just literally financial wealth. And so the wealth management industry, your net worth, I'm wealthy, I've got lots of money. It's all around just how much money you've got in life. And wealth isn't really that. If you actually look at what the definition of wealth, it's actually something that you value and it's actually something that's valuable. And I guess that true wealth to me is much more than money. I think if you are the richest guy in the world, if you're just rich and you haven't got good health or you haven't got good relationships or you're not doing something that you're passionate about, to me, I don't think you're really wealthy. You're wealthy on one side of all the dimensions out there. So true wealth to me, really, it's much more broader. It's everything that you value in your life. That could be literally just having the ability to read or having time with your family or being able to, go on holidays. Wealth it can be as broad as you want. And I think the broader, the better.
That sounds redefining for a lot of us. And I guess for you, that the flip side is you have had a career in finance. Was that always what you thought you'd do? And how have you kind of walked the path to where you are today? Give us a little bit of your career snapshot.
It's probably not been a path, it's been more of a rocky bridge. I guess I was really probably naturally good at numbers when I was a kid, and mathematics and all that sort of stuff was kind of my thing. And naturally you think when you're a kid that then you should become into finance and you should become an accountant. I was an accountant for a year, kind of hated it, realized that it wasn't exciting, moved into kind of investment banking and then thought, oh, that's not really for me either. And then I met a financial advisor and then that sent me down a different road and that kind of introduced the people element. And I guess over that I've been an advisor for 11 years now. It's been a little bit one hand fighting with the industry and what financial advice really is and out there. And then secondly, going, look, I just want to help people and learn about people. And, I'm curious about where they want to go in life. And I guess I've kind of always been battling those two worlds. For the last 4 years, I've been running my business and I kind of doing it my way in my show. So I've kind of let go of what everyone else is doing and just do it my way now.
That sounds liberating. So I love this idea that the new wealth is well-being. And I think, you wouldn't be alone in sort of valuing that kind of definition.
Yeah.
And you sort of say money is not always the motivation. So how did you arrive at this definition yourself? Have you had an experience because of your career perhaps that has redefined wealth for you? Because I must admit, the idea of being wealthy has a pretty negative rap in most of our society when we see what's happening out there with those people who do have lots of money and how perhaps that means others don't.
Yeah, so you're right. There's lots of beliefs, financial beliefs that we've kind of thrown in us as kids, and they might have come from our parents and they've come from their parents and their parents and their parents. Rich people are evil, money is bad, etc. A lot of those things are in society. Wealthy really it's just someone who's got money. It doesn't mean that's good or bad. And I guess it's the connotations with what they do with that money really determines whether, being wealthy is actually helpful or not. I guess the view of people value meaning more than money. I guess it's when I grew up, I guess the the generation that I'm in, we probably look at things a little bit differently to say, the baby boomer generation. And, money's not really something that motivates us. And there's a lot of research out here around intrinsic motivation, and people actually go to work for more reasons than actually just a paycheck. And I think that's probably something that I'm just very kind of mindful of. And that kind of probably answers your question there more.
Absolutely. So you mentioned in some of your copy, which I've read as I've Google stalked you, that there is that dark side of property investing. And I think it's sort of coming to the fore because in my mind, Australia's quite obsessed with property, and we've done a program all about the idea of rent vesting and why property is the thing that we're all obsessed with. Obviously, buyers and sellers are trying to achieve money and a financial status, which means they can maybe do whatever they want. Yeah. Why do you think property investing has become a little bit dark and murky?
Okay, so it's always probably been dark and murky. It's completely unregulated, firstly. So every man and his dog can say absolutely anything to you. And, if things don't turn out like you want them to, you can't really go back and say, you told me this. So the other thing as well is that it's hugely emotional, and there's a huge status element attached to property investing, and everyone wants to be a property investor. And unfortunately, not everyone is educated enough to know what's the difference between a good property and a bad property. And then there's actually so much money involved within the industry that naturally it attracts certain type of people who know they can make a lot of money fast. And so then you get developers and people selling off the plan and all this, where there's lots of commissions involved. And there's this kind of belief that they have a story they've told themselves that they're doing the right thing, but behind the scenes they know they're not. And that's really the bad side of property investing. I think the obsession has kind of grown, and it's at probably the peak right now, because property's done so well for so people that everyone's just kind of buying into this overconfidence of the property market, and it keeps pushing things up. Now, that's not to say that it's a bad investment. It's just that all the work I do with young clients, young families in their 30s, 40s, and a lot of it's around property, but it's not the traditional kind of, let's just buy 10 properties all over Australia and hope for the best.
Absolutely. There needs to be strategy behind that. And it's funny because I do think maybe it's a legacy of the baby boomer generation, my generation and perhaps yours, educated in this idea that you can't really fail if you invest in bricks and mortar, whereas the share market's risky. But the reality is it's all risky, right? Like it's just buyer beware no matter what.
Yeah, I think with shares, if you buy a share of a company and you want to unwind that decision, it's pretty quick. You make a call or you literally log online and you sell the shares. Property,
it's highly liquid, of course. Yeah.
Property, you generally put all your money in, you leverage it, 10 times, and then you potentially just let it sit there and you make a decision 5-10 years later whether that was a good decision. Whether you actually made a good decision or not, you won't actually know till then. And then by then it's really too late. And so that's really the problem with getting it wrong with property, is there's a huge opportunity cost. And there's all these other opportunities that come by making the first decision right. And unfortunately, that's kind of the big downside when unfortunately, you're not making the right decision.
Absolutely. Now, financial planning is obviously under the microscope at the moment, and it will be for most of 2018, highlighted by the Banking Royal Commission, which is in full flight. Mm-hmm. It's obviously showing advisors in big banks and some of the insurers knowingly have misled customers over sometimes a decade or more. So how do you think, from your point of view as someone who's in the industry, that financial planning will recover in terms of brand financial planning and, your image, which is probably taking a bit of a battering at the moment? And how can we all know whether the people we're choosing with our money are equipped and ethical?
So we've got to understand where the industry's come from and where the industry's going to go, firstly, at a kind of high level, to actually understand, what's going to happen. The industry started in the 80s, and it was really a sales industry that got, came out of basically, big manufacturers of products like AMP and AXA and things like that wanted to sell their products. And so they came up with this thing called a financial advisor. And then in the 90s, then basically share trading and superannuation came in, and it turned from selling insurance kind of based products to selling wealth management based products and funds under advice. And then it's now kind of being proven that model isn't really giving the greatest of outcomes. And going forward, it'll evolve into a completely different, industry that's much more built around life planning and goals and strategies and coaching and things like that. So the way the industry is going to move is much further away from product and selling products into much more coaching. The problem is you've got 20-odd thousand advisors in the country, and 20-odd thousand advisors, very few actually want to move in this direction. They want to keep going back to what they've always done, and that's selling investment products, basically. So I'm all for the Royal Commission. I've been blogging about this for many years, and I've seen it. It's worked in banks. I've worked in, the AMPs of the world. I've seen it all, and I'm glad all this stuff's actually hitting the papers because it needed to be talked about. Otherwise, it's just this big, heavy sack on the industry that has, it's the elephant in the room, I guess.
And I guess on the flip side, how can consumers or clients really educate ourselves to trust the financial planners that we are engaging? Is there some sort of code of conduct which is likely to come out of this, or something that can really, I guess, let us know who's good and who's not? Yeah. Because at the moment, it just seems like it's a bit of a lucky dip.
Yeah, so it's a really difficult question. The reason why is that it's not so much what you'd think. So, the associations out there would like you to think that it's the people that are most qualified who have got certain letters after their name. You'd think that the people who have been doing the job the longest is a sure sign of success. And a lot of what's coming out today isn't young planners who are just on their first job. It's a lot of older planners. So it is very difficult. I think the first thing you need to do is find out who is. I'd probably work with a business owner, and I know that I'm a business owner myself, but personally, I think that they've got their reputation on the line rather than a younger advisor working in a business. And that's, it's a harsh reality of when you are younger and you're a planner. I'd also look to work with an advisor that's not aligned to a banking or because generally speaking, a lot of their advice is tailored to an APL, and that APL is generally tailored around selling the products that institution owns them. I'd also step away from advisors that promise you investment returns that are unrealistic and that they're going to know where the world's going. Personally, no one knows where the world's going. Every advisor who has given advice like that for the last 10 years would have got it wrong every year. So you really want to focus on an advisor that's actually trying to give you coaching on actually financial basics and actually a system and a process for you to follow to actually move ahead financially, and not so much targeted around investment returns. Now, there are advisors out there, there are a lot of the younger advisors are moving this way because they understand that's their long-term future. So, that's probably a good starting point. So not conflicted, not based around investment, and more based around coaching.
That's great tips. And I guess the reality is we have to pay for that advice. If we want it to not be just free and products being pushed at us that we maybe don't need or can't afford or aren't going to work for us, we actually need to value the advice. And I guess that's the sort of elephant in the room when it comes to this discussion, that a lot of people are used to, it's tied up in the commissions and that's how we get the advice. But if we really want the impartial advice, it sounds like we need to be able to own that and pay for it like we would any other service.
100% agree. That's a harsh, people don't value things, especially, and they love when things are free or they feel like free. And that's one of the benefits of commission, I guess, is people feel like they're not paying for a service, but they are in other ways. They just don't know that. I think definitely paying, money in your pocket, even if you just commit to it with a good advisor for a year or two and just actually get your knowledge up and start taking steps forward. The only way you're actually going to move yourself forward financially is when you start to prioritize finances in your life and you actually put a focus on it. If it keeps pushing down, down your priority list and keeps getting fallen off your to-do list, then you're never going to value, you're never going to step forward. So the good advisors out there will actually drag that priority out there and create meaning around why money matters to you. And then once you know that, then you've actually got all the motivation there. If you don't need money, then it's hard to be motivated. But if you've actually got meaningful goals that you really want to achieve, like put your kids through education or move overseas or move out of Sydney or whatever it is, then you're going to get the motivation there. And now you just need a system and a process to do it.
So your business, Wealthful, partly began because you had this frustration with the type of advice or the way advice was being delivered. And also the flip side is your own passion to build the ethical advice firm of the future, which I think is fantastic. How does that really stack up? Obviously people come to you for the financial outcome in many ways. What other sort of things in your toolkit do you offer them that perhaps other advisors don't?
So, I just jumped off a call with a new client then. My questions aren't around, do you want to make more money, or, when do you want to retire and how much money do you need? I think a lot of those questions are pretty pointless. I think really what the questions you should be asking, questions that matter is where do you want to live long term? What do you really love what you do? What do you want to do with your kids? Do you want to, what's happening with your parents? Like, these are the things that really matter. These are the things that you should be planning for. And these are the things that you're going to have to think, well, financially, we're going to need money for that. So let's start to let's figure out how we can, grow our money so we can pay for these things. So what I do is I shift the focus from just having money or making money for the sake of making money and trying to grow more money to actually figuring out, well, what do we actually need? What actually matters? And a lot of that comes down to helping people, really question whether they're doing the right job. I'm pretty black and white with that. If you're not passionate about it and you don't enjoy it, then I do think that's a huge part of your life you're missing out on. So I think, a lot of it comes down to questioning people around their health and, is it really worth it that you're working 70 hours a week and you're not seeing your family or whatever it is? And I think, the conversations go in different directions, and I guess that creates a much more meaningful outcome. And so sometimes it's, we're stepping away from making more money to actually getting a better life. And that's quite common.
And it does sound great, but the reality is, I guess, on the flip side, that we read all these reports about how much money we need to retire, even comfortably, not even, excessively, not talking buying super yachts and so forth, particularly if you're going to stay in big cities like Sydney and Melbourne, where it is expensive to live, no matter how old you are or what stage of life you're at. Are you saying that perhaps it's not really all about that and we can be comfortable and satisfied with less? Because I've heard sort of the whole, you need $1 million in super, you need to own your own house, you need this, and that's just going to get you that basic kind of middle class retirement. And so, the other issue I guess we're grappling with is a lot of women retiring with less super and less wealth. They're getting divorced, or their husbands are passing away sooner, and that's the highest rate of homelessness growing in Australia is women in their 50s and 60s, which is completely shocking. So how do you balance out that sort of cold hard reality with those lofty goals, really? I mean, is it a conversation you have to have with clients every year? How often do you check in with them? How do they, things move is what I'm saying, and how do you make sure that they're still on track to where they need to be?
Yes, everyone at some point are going to stop working, and we're going to live hopefully for a period. Who knows how long that's going to be? It could be 5 years, it could be 10 years, it could be 40 years. I think the oldest man in the world died this week at 119. So you actually have no idea how long you're going to live. And so how much money you need for retirement, you actually have no idea. How much money do you need? Obviously, the more the better. But, striving and for this round number of $1 million is what wealth management and the papers want you to think, so they can sell you more money, put you more money into your super fund, so they can make more money on fees. Really, what the number is actually comes down to you, how you live your life, and really the focus should shift about, well, I need money because in retirement I want to do X, Y, and Z. And unless you have really any idea of what you really value in life and where you want to spend your time, it's hard to put a number on it. Now, for example, I went to the beach on Sunday. I sat there and read a book for 2 hours, and we just sat on a rock and went for a swim. Like, that didn't cost any money. If I want to do things like that in retirement, I don't need much money, do I? So I think we need to shift away from believing that the more and, we need lots more, to actually going, well, actually, the way that I live life and what I want to do in life actually doesn't cost a lot of money, and we start to work it way back. So there are problems. Unfortunately, I'm a massive believer in, in the flaws of capitalism, and and there are people.
That sounds so ironic, Chris.
Yeah, I mean, it's well, I mean, that's the truth, really, isn't it? So, I mean, capitalism isn't working for the majority of the population. I'm trying to help people who are, I guess, getting marginalised by that to actually find a way through the system. The system, unfortunately, won't change. The world's built on capitalism, and rather than, I guess, being left behind and getting, I guess, affected by that, you're trying to, I guess, make the best of what you can. And so you're doing things like, doing a job that you're passionate about and that's meaningful, and pursuing things in your life that, you find meaning from, expecting that, that capitalism's going to go away. Unfortunately, you haven't really got that time.
No, I totally agree. Part of your business is what you call the Wealthful Way, and I know there's an emphasis on building that actionable and simple system for predominantly younger Australians. You were saying a lot of your clients are in your 30s and 40s. So for them, what does that look like? And it sounds like your wealth planning processes are a little bit different, without giving away all your trade secrets, of course. What's sort of different about your process? Is it more than just filling in a whole bunch of forms and going and get a health check? What do you do that's a bit different?
Clients will probably say to me, is that it, a lot of the time? And the reason why is that, what we actually do is we build something that's extremely simple, and we have one focus every year. That literally might be, we're going to try to save $30,000 this year. We're going to buy our first investment property. We nut it down, because really, good advice is actually only a few different levers. It's not about, putting money all over the place and betting on this next latest Bitcoin or, whatever. It's actually just following a very simple system and a process, and actually then just sticking to it. And the discipline of doing that actually and compounding over a long time is actually what gets you a really good result. So my process is actually cutting through all that noise of all these different options, and then I guess giving people very clear actions on what they need to be doing right now. And then and that's obviously always changing. It could be they're helping them actually get their first home and actually understanding what's actually a good property. Then we're actually saying, right now we actually need to pay off some of this debt. So let's just focus on that this year. Okay, maybe we want to do a renovation. It's kind of talking people through all these big decisions and actually giving them one real focus to get through it.
Excellent. That sounds very helpful. So who have you had in your life that's really inspired you, either as a mentor? They don't have to be well known. They could be in your immediate circle or your family. If so, who are they, and what have they taught you about life and success?
I don't listen to a lot of the traditional kind of financial advice kind of gurus. There's a few that are very quiet behind the scenes, and they've started very successful organizations, and they look at things very differently. So Arun Abbey is one, which he started IPAC. If you are wanting to, the book he's written, How Much Is Enough? I mean, fundamentally that encapsulates everything that I'm kind of talking about here. More broadly, I quite like to kind of take tips from everyone. I think everyone's got good points, everyone's got bad points, and I guess it's you can seek motivation from many different sources. So I'm a bit of a grab a bit from everywhere. But I mean, Arun Abbey is he's a pretty intelligent guy, and he looks at things pretty broadly and pretty smartly in my eyes.
It's always good to be challenged as well, I guess, on how we think. I think there's a risk that sometimes it's that echo chamber. We only sort of listen and absorb information that we already know or we agree with. So I'm always into that challenge as well. So yeah, that's a great tip. So last advice, what would be your number one tip for listeners today who want to get ahead in the politics of wealth?
Redefine wealth to yourself, and really kind of second guess what you're actually doing and where you're going. And figure out whether you're pursuing the goals of your parents and goals of your friends and goals of society, or you're actually doing something that's meaningful for you. I think that's a question you should always be asking yourself. And if you can, hand on heart, know that you are, then you're probably heading in the right direction. But if you're not, you need to figure out what's not working, and I guess actually start to redefine everything. And as soon as you do that, that's when you can start moving in the right direction.
That's been fabulous food for thought. If you do want to connect further with Chris Bates, there will be some details on our show notes. You've been listening to The Politics of Everything. Until next time, keep well. Thanks for listening today. If you've enjoyed The Politics of Everything, we thrive on feedback. So please add a short review and share the podcast with your network, your friends and family. I'm also always on the hunt for fabulous new guests. So if you've got a view to share and an idea how to get our listeners excited, please email me at amber@bespokecomms, that's BESPOKECOMMS.com.au, and we'll be sure to get back to you. Until next time.